Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speedrun Insider. My name is CJitsallGewd. Thank you so much for joining me this week, as you do every week. Thank you to everyone who listens to the podcast, downloads the podcast, rate us, like us, share us with your friends, give us 5 stars. If you don't give us 5 stars, I'm inclined to believe you are a hater. We have a great episode coming up for you today, as I promise you at the end of each and every week that it's a great episode. You're not going to want to miss it. I do want to take a quick pause for the cause and let you guys know that SDAT had recently passed, which meant that all of the podcasts that you had previously listened to over the last couple weeks were recorded pre-SDAT, including one which may or may not come out or may be coming out in the following weeks because there was some audio difficulties that we had to take care of. I had to go to the audio doctor. Having said that, there were a few incentives that if you were not present at Speeddoxathon 2021 that you may have missed out on. And those were to raise money for Save the Children, and we raised $7,280.00. Thank God there were no cents this time, because I really can't stand the idea that we just never raise a flat number. But you guys wanted to see some podcasts. Everyone that was listening to the event, watching the event live as it happened, donated channel points to the amount of, I think it was 500,000 channel points to unlock a series of goals. The first goal was to have my guest for today on the podcast, and we'll introduce him in a minute. If you're looking at the title, you've cheated and already know who it is. Next week, we'll have another guest on the podcast, who, again, if you were at Speeddoxathon 2021, you already know who it is. And finally, the last thing that the gracious denizens over at the Speeddoxathon 2021 chat, they graciously donated all of their channel points to unlock a series of podcasts that we are calling Speedrun Insider All-Stars. That's right, your favorite guests from past episodes are coming back for one more time. We're going to have them on the show. It'll be listed differently in your RSS feed, wherever you get your favorite podcast app. They will be listed differently on the YouTube channel. So if you like the show and you have a favorite episode, you can go to the Speed Docs Discord. The link will be provided in the description of the podcast / the description of the YouTube video. You can go to that video and there will be a poll in the Discord. You can vote on your favorite episode. We will be reaching out to some of your favorite guests to record new episodes for Speedrun Insider All-Stars. We're going to do 5 episodes, and we're going to release them now throughout the end of the year and early into 2022. So it's a little more business than I usually take care of, but I just wanted to take that time to explain thank you to everybody at Speeddoxathon 2021 for all of your generosity and your donations. And thank you for unlocking perks in the podcast. The listeners really appreciate it. And now, without further delay, let's introduce you to someone we met along the way at Speeddoxathon 2021. He is the wonder from down under, the Mad Max of Crash Bandicoot. He is the Chazwazer that's always right on time. It is the one and the only Clockdistrict. What's going on, Clocky?
Oh, I was not expecting that intro. I'm doing good, dude. How are you going?
Listen, I'm having a great time. I'm here. I'm with my friend, my new friend, and we're just vibing. I do have a story that I'm going to tell about you, though. I know you know.
I know what it is.
So I remember so this is another Speeddoxathon related story. I remember we were getting submissions and there was a lull. There was a lull between the initial fervor of getting submissions and then when we eventually got more submissions. There was a break, and it was open for a month, so I'm not saying that it wasn't to be expected. Obviously, you're not going to get new submissions every day, but it ended up being a lull, and we were getting nervous. I was getting nervous that we weren't going to have enough submissions to do a 7-day event. It was very concerning. We were all very worried about it. Again, when I say everyone, I mean me. And so, if anyone knows me, I don't do anything the way that normal marathons do them because I'm stubborn and those practices make me itch. So I actively contact runners and ask slash request slash beg or trade favors to get them to do runs at the show. For example, Argig was on the podcast. I asked Argig when he was on the podcast if he would like to do the event. He graciously did. Arg is a fantastic speedrunner and an even better person. A great episode if you haven't listened to it. TGH did a few runs, same thing. He did the podcast, and I asked him if he would submit some runs. And there was somebody, and I really, so the backstory on this is actually interesting. Sable, who we all know and love, former guest on the show, a dear friend, a member of the Speed Docs team. Not the team, I guess she's the adjacent crew, but she does a lot of work with us. And she had messaged me saying, "Is it okay if I don't submit Spyro?" And she always submits Spyro. And I was like, "Oh, that's yeah, it's fine if you don't. Why aren't you gonna submit Spyro?" She's like, "I really want Last Guardian to get in." I said, "Okay." And she's like, "I'm honestly just tired of submitting Spyro because every marathon takes Spyro. They don't look at my other games." And I was like, "You know what? That's fair. No problem. We already showed the Pathless, but I'll take Inside and I'll take Last Guardian." And I said, "Can you recommend me any Spyro runners?" And in her very sable way, she thought about it very thoughtfully and came back later and said, Clockdistrict. And I said, "Okay, I don't know who that is." And so she was like, "You can join the Discord, and that's where you will find him." So I go in the Discord, and I DM Clockdistrict, and I can hear him laughing behind his muted microphone, his little giggle, because I DM'd him on Discord, and then I heard nothing. And now you're thinking to yourself, this is the part of the story where he eventually gets back to me. Except he never did. He never replied. He never acknowledged my message. And I was like, okay, well, that's fine. That happens. And I'm not saying I can't handle the rejection. I was like, okay, yeah. But if you're listening, you know that he was in SDAT. He was at SDAT. So he had submitted Crash Bandicoot. And I was like, "Oh, that's nice. He submitted something." But I was like, "Wait a minute. He submitted I didn't know he played Crash." Okay, he plays Crash. That's cool. And then the first time I saw him, he showed up to this schedule reveal. I was like, "What is this? What is this?" And then he submitted to be a host, and I'm like, "Who are you? Did I contact the wrong Clockdistrict? Like, what happened? What?" So from your perspective, so he ghosted me is what happened. He ghosted me, and then he showed up and he was fantastic, and now he's like around to stay. But I'm like, that motherfucker ghosted me.
Yeah, I've been giggling the whole time.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, yeah, no. Basically, around when you messaged me, there was just some IRL things going on, so I was really unresponsive to a lot of people. And then it got to the point where it'd been like a while since you had messaged me, and I'm like, I don't want to reply because my anxiety is like, no, you're never going to reply to this person. And I'm just like, I'll just submit anyway. I didn't submit any Spyro because I was on a massive Crash grind and I hadn't played Spyro 3, which is my main Spyro category, in a long time. So I was like not too comfortable submitting it for marathons, but I'll definitely have to submit Spyro for a future marathon.
You can submit whatever you want, by the way. I loved the Crash. And Crash was a great block. That was like something we really didn't expect, and it really was.
Yeah, having myself, Gaffy, and Crispy, both of which are like good friends of mine, having the three of us all playing Crash in the same marathon was really fun.
Yeah, it's weird how these blocks kind of get put together, but it's weird because people like game blocks to an extent, like they kind of do, but there is a tolerance that they can handle and they can't handle, right? Like they can't do 8 hours of Zelda. People will fall asleep.
Yeah.
But people also, what they hate more than that is they hate runner blocks. They don't like
Mm,
when runners have like large chunks on the schedule. And I kind of get why. I mean, it kind of like if you don't like that person's vibe, then you're with them for a long time, right? On the other hand, it's just way nicer for the runner, right? They show up, they do all their runs, they go home. They go back to doing what they do, right?
yeah.
All right. Well, I have a few things I want to talk to you about. And I
Hmm.
think that the where I want to end up, I want to talk to you about like I felt like SDAT 2021 was special but in the context that the people we were meeting, it felt very special. But before we get there, I want to go back. I want to take it all the way back. And I want to go back to young Clock. Um listening to Man Down Under, Men at Work,
Yep.
you
It's the
know,
only song we
and
listen to.
and I made the joke that the only thing I know about Australia is what I learned from that Simpsons episode. But what was it like growing up as a young lad in Australia?
um, God, I don't even know how to compare it to anything. You just basically want a life story, or
Well, just like the early years. How do you get? Okay, how about this? How do we get young Clock, and where does the video game start? Where do you start playing games?
the video game started really, really early on, actually. So my mum and my stepdad were never really into video games, but my nan and my uncle on my mum's side of the family, heavy into video games. I would probably be about 4 or 5 years old. My grandmother got me into Spyro 3 and Crash Bandicoot 2 on the PlayStation 1. And they were both just franchises that I just connected with instantly.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to complete Spyro 3, which is the biggest Spyro game on the PlayStation 1 at like 7 years old, and I was doing it. I was getting like 20,000 gems and 150 eggs in that game.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a big game compared to Spyro 1. It's just absolutely huge. So I kind of started with them, and I got my own PlayStation 1, which is actually sitting right behind me. And I have put like tens of thousands of hours into video games on that. So around when I was 6, I got my PlayStation 2, and then she got me into like Ratchet and Clank, Simpsons Hit and Run, and those sorts of games. So my video game journey started really early, and I've kind of just continued with the same franchises all the way now into adulthood. This is now nearly 20 years later. I'm still playing Spyro, I'm still playing Crash, I'm still playing Ratchet and Clank. I'm playing the originals, I'm playing remakes, I'm playing new releases. I got into Diablo 2 as well when I was like 8 years old.
Oh, Jesus.
Which I still have the install discs for. It's
I'm imagining a very, very long like T1 line that's like run underneath the ocean, and it's like into someone's backyard in California.
Yeah.
One of the things I think about is like some people, and this is true in the US, and people don't really understand it. And I'm wondering if you have a similar situation, maybe on a different scale than maybe I do. But like they'll announce something, like something big will get announced. Like, I don't know, like what's a good like Uber. Uber was a thing for years, right? And I live in like upstate New York, like tiny town, right? Like just nothing's up there. And it's like far from the city. People think, oh, New York, oh, you live in the city, everything is concrete jungle. No, it's like fucking cows, man. And it's like Uber, like we didn't get Uber until like 2018. Like Uber had been a
Dang.
thing forever, and we didn't get Uber until really late. Like I remember, like when we got 4G, sorry, when we got 3G, they announced 4G plus. Right?
Oh,
Right? Like we're always behind the curve. And I'm wondering, like, do you have that experience of just like all right, well, like, like my friends are playing this and I'm behind the curve? Because I felt that with games growing up. Like everyone's playing. I didn't even understand that what I was playing wasn't new. Right? I'm playing the N64 and everyone's on the GameCube. I'm on the GameCube. They're playing the Xbox, and now finally got the PlayStation 2. They're on the 360. I always felt like I was
yeah.
behind the ball a little bit, and I love my retro games because of that. Because like I put an absurd amount of time into Hit and Run.
Oh, that's a great game.
It's a
Great game.
fantastic game. It's been a fantastic game, especially if you're a
beautiful.
Simpson fan. It's like the most Simpson game you could possibly ask for.
It really is. So in terms of like location based stuff, not really, because I'm in like the second biggest city in the entire country.
Brag about it.
To be fair, we only have like 5 million people living here. Like 28 million across the whole country, so it's kind of small compared to what you guys have in the US. But yeah, so I live in a major city, so we never were behind on anything. And like we still have we're pretty up to date with technology here in Melbourne, but in terms of like money in the family, I was definitely behind. When like I didn't get a Xbox 360/PS3 generation console probably until a couple of years before the PS4 came out.
Mm-hmm. That was a long generation too.
It was a massive generation. It's not to say that I wasn't upset with it. I was still pretty happy with what I had. But we just never really had the money for like buying expensive things. You know, those things were very much a luxury. Like we weren't struggling by any chance, but it's just like that sort of stuff was definitely going to come like later on in my lifetime. Yeah, that's pretty much it, really.
Yeah, it's like, oh, hey, listen, we're comfortable as long as we stay in our lane.
Yeah.
As long as we stay in our lane, everything's going to be easy street. If we go out of our lane, watch out.
Yeah, that's exactly what it felt like growing up.
I remember, this is such a weird memory. My mom doesn't even really remember this, but I do. I remember my mom, there was a period my parents got divorced. And I remember I was a kid. My mom was at work. My dad wasn't at the house because he didn't live there anymore. My sister watching me at that point in my life was her in her room, making sure that I didn't die. And I was playing on the like, I forget, it was like PS2 maybe. I was playing like Call of Duty 3 on the PS2. And I remember that this dude came to the door and started banging on the door. And I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. And I like hid behind the couch, and I'm waiting for this dude to go away. And I remember he left us a note on the door, and he left. And what that note is, it is your utility bill. And my mom wasn't like delinquent on her bill. She was like missed it by like a week or something. But she wasn't like back. But what the utility company does is they use this really shitty tape and they put it on your front door. The tape mark doesn't come off. So everyone that comes to your house and they see the mark knows
they know
that you didn't pay your utility bill.
Yeah.
And I was like, that is super fucking scumbag, man. Like my mom explained it to me and I'm like, that's the deadbeat notice. And she's like, yeah, well, just we're a week late. They didn't turn the power off or anything. They just gave me the scam notice. And I remember being like, damn, things are, and it wasn't like we were uncomfortable or anything. I was like, things are a little thinner. My friend had like every new thing that ever came out. And I'm like, I'm going to go to his house and we're going to play the 360. He had the wireless, I'll never forget this. He had the wireless 360 mic, which is a little fucking earpiece. And it looks like if someone gave you that thing today, you'd be like, "Is this a children's toy?" Like it looks
Yeah,
like a Fisher Price toy.
but
And
for
I'm
the
like,
time.
but for the time, oh my god, and it was rechargeable.
Yep, yep. I remember like when that sort of stuff was just brand new, and I was just gushing it. Like I would see it in like catalogs and stuff, and be like, "Damn, one day I'm gonna have that. One day."
Was there a thing in your life that you like looked at it and were like, one day when I hit the big time, this is my big purchase. That I'm fuck everything else. I'm gonna go buy this.
Yes, surprisingly, but it's nothing gaming related.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, it's actually like I just wanted just a big brand name guitar because I am a musician. And in the background of my streams, I do have a small collection just sitting there. And I never purchased it, but I have one sitting here. And I didn't steal it. I actually won it in a charity raffle. It's my beautiful 2004 Japanese Fender Telecaster.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's a one of a kind though, because there's a dude here in Melbourne named Michael Harron, and he's spent like the last 5 years like rebuilding and repairing guitars, and he started opening up like sort of like a side part to his business. It's sort of like another revenue avenue for him where he will import a instrument from Japan, a Japanese Fender. He'll import it into the country, and he will do whatever you want to it. He will refinish it to whatever color you want, and the finish will be beautiful. It'll be like the thickness of your skin, instead of just heavily coated on like most finishes are nowadays from big brands. He'll set up the wiring exactly how you want it. He'll set up the action how you want it. He'll replace the nickel frets that are on the fretboard with stainless steel frets, which will last absolutely forever. He does all that stuff, and normally that'll be about $2,500 Australian, which would be somewhere around like the 1,800 to 2,000 American. And so a few years ago, he actually did a build for charity, and he was selling off raffle tickets for that, and there was like $20 each. So I pretty much bought as many as I could at the time because those weeks I was a little bit low on cash. I think I got about 3 or 4 tickets. And he went through some stuff, so he wasn't able to finish it for a few years, but he finished building it, and he's like, "Look, I'm gonna draw the winner." And I just remember I was at work, and I had my phone in my back pocket, and it just starts vibrating like crazy because all of my friends in the music industry, because like everyone in the industry knows Michael, all my friends just started tagging me in the giveaway post because he did it while I was at work. And I remember just sitting there, just behind the counter, just like kneeling down, just listening into the video, like, what the fuck? And that was sort of just like this like one thing that I've always wanted, and I have it now, and I'm so happy. And it's also got some sentimental value attached to it already as well. And I've already had it for like a year, so
Absolutely.
yeah, no, it's beautiful.
It's a great story. You might like this story. I don't know many people that are like into guitars. So I don't tell the story that much, but his dad owned a hardware store. I'm not going to say the name of the hardware store. They owned like a mom and pop style hardware store. My dad worked in the hardware store, and there was a famous musician who used to come into the hardware store for parts and for little scrap stuff from time to time. And you may have heard of him. His name is Les Paul.
Oh, yep.
And so he would come in, and sometimes he did it. My dad, as he recalled it. My dad, I didn't know him when I was an adult, so like a lot of these stories, I had never been able to go back and ask questions because he passed away when I was a teenager. But he told me that Les Paul would come in when he was working and like buy like a bunch of scrap shit and like it would end up on the guitar in some form or fashion, right? Because they just had like also just had like a bunch of stuff,
Mm,
and so he said it was pretty cool. So
that's so sick.
yeah, I thought you might like that little tidbit. Dude lived to be 94, right? That's insane.
Yeah, Les is just one of the most influential musicians of all time. I mean, literally one of the most popular guitar shapes of all time is his design. After initially being rejected as well, the story of how the Les Paul became a thing is just incredible. Who knows? Maybe the wood that was originally used, because he did take like a scrap 2x4 and attach some pickups to it on the wiring and stuff, slap the neck on it, and then took an acoustic, cut it in half, and then smacked it on. That 2x4 could have been bought from there. You never know.
Who knows? Who knows? But I remember that my dad was very proud of that story. He didn't have a lot of those stories like, oh, I met famous person so and so, but there's I know I just don't talk about music a lot because I don't know anyone that's really into it. But one of my favorite stories about like guitars and stuff. Did you ever hear the story of "Spirit in the Sky"?
Which one?
The song, I forget the name. Roger Green, was that his name? Greenbaum? Hang on.
No, I haven't heard it. I haven't heard this. I've heard the song, but I haven't heard the story.
So in that, yeah, Norman Greenbaum, one hit wonder, and it has that really iconic sound to it, right? That like, woo, 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 woo. And he got there, and people were like, "Hey, how did you get that sound? How'd you get that? How'd you get the guitar to make that like really cool sound?" And people have spent like a long time trying to recreate it. And he said, "I don't know. I have no idea. I got there, the fuser was already in the guitar, and it was already making that sound. I left and came back, and it was destroyed. So I have no idea how they got that sound. I don't know how it was made. And like people have had a really hard time recreating it because obviously the guitar isn't around anymore. But like it's such I hear that song, and like that song is from like I think it was recorded in 68 and released in like 69, 70. But
That
like it
sounds about right.
yeah, because it's like right at that point of like late 60s, early 70s, psychedelic rock, gospel like subgenre. What's the name of that album? Was that Milk Cow? That the B-side of Milk Cow? See, I'm outfoxing the music guy. I'm doing it, y'all. No, but I just thought that was such an interesting story. I love stuff like that where it's like, oh, well, why haven't people used this sound? It's like, oh, because we haven't been able to recreate it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I don't think anyone's going to be able to recreate it exactly how it happened. I think it's one of those sounds that probably has just been lost to time.
Oh, it was a fuzz box built into the body of the guitar. It was a Fender Telecaster. Yeah, there you go. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. You might be able to get close, but considering the guitar is now destroyed, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing about that too, and maybe we can tie this back into games, is like you can get close, but something like that, and it's so good, it holds up. Like it still sounds fresh today.
Yeah.
Because it's not a sound you've heard.
Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, most music these days is pretty copy paste nowadays, so hearing something older is very refreshing.
There's like a part of a song I hear all the time. And I don't know if this starts with Edgar Winters or not, but Edgar Winters has a song called Frankenstein. And there's this whole part in it. It's like dun 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 dun, right? I'm sorry for all the people at home that have to listen to my my music, my talent. Hang on, I'll do it on the kazoo. Right? So that's what it sounds like.
To SDAT.
Yeah, tying it back to SDAT. And I hear that little, I don't even know what you call that little ditty, that little bit of music. I hear that in everything. I hear that. I heard that in Cult of Personality the other day.
Mm.
And I'm like, I've listened to that fucking album. How many fucking times? Right? How many times have I listened to In Living Color? And now I'm hearing it, right? And then I was listening to the radio when I heard it. I'm like, God damn it. But it's like really, I mean, it's good. It's just reused constantly. And so the things that stand out in your mind, especially when I think about music, are the things that don't sound like other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or the stuff that gets sampled because it's so unique that when you hear it, that's what you think of, right? Even if you think of the sample. And I think in a way, especially when I was watching the Crash block, like how well the Crash Bandicoot games kind of stood out, and how well they remastered in terms of just like how they look, maybe not how they play, because I know you guys were ragging on the remake, the quality of the remakes, but like it's a really straightforward concept. It's a 3D platformer, except it's not, because you're always going on a 2D plane for the most part, asterisk.
Yeah.
You're always going in a direction, whether that's forward, backwards, side to side. But like it's not like anyone else came around and did it better, per se, like a whole game that way. And I think of the games that have tried and kind of failed. Like I remember there's this section in Jack 2 where you have to be Daxter and you have to outrun a boulder, or maybe it's Jack 3. You're running away from this fucking boulder and it's awful, and I died 100 times because that game's awful. Was Daxter, it's not meant for that.
I know exactly the part you're talking about, and I hated it too.
And I'm like, is this just really trying to be Crash, the you don't know what's coming because you're running toward the camera thing? And
I
it's like,
mean, Jack and Dexter was developed by Naughty Dog, who developed the original Crash Bandicoot games.
Listen, you know that, I know that, the people know that.
Yeah.
But Daxter ain't no fucking Crash.
No, he's not a Bandicoot.
He is no Bandicoot. So I'm thinking about the games that have really held up, and how that relates to, like, what other games in your mind are like that for you? I mean, I know you mentioned Spyro. I'm sure the games in your nostalgia wheelhouse are gonna fit the bill.
Well, yeah, Spyro, but like nostalgia aside, Spyro still does hold up today, and is still a very popular franchise, and people still love him to bits. What else going on? All of the like older franchises that still exist today, like Mario and Sonic, I can't really say them because they've kind of changed a lot as the years go on. But I feel like Spyro and Crash especially have this very specific formula that just work really well for those games. Sonic a little bit, but most of the stuff that I think of now are like fan games and stuff like that. Stuff like, licensed stuff as well, like Sonic Mania comes to mind, but that's pretty much just a rip-off of the original sort of formula. It's not like a re-envisioned version of it. But with Crash, I mean, if you think back to my run, which was Crash 1, which has, the original formula, which is just run in a direction, you can spin, you can jump, and then you look at Crash 4, which is a brand new title that came out last year. That still does build off the original sort of, I don't want to say formula too much. It sort of builds up on, it takes what the original Crash trilogy had and just turns it into something that feels fresh.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of games went off the rails, because they looked around and they were like, okay, Mario is innovating, right? Yep. Mario made the hardest leap in any character in any game so that every other character could walk, right?
Yeah.
He jumped off of 2D into 3D and became the standard bearer for what a 3D character controls like. You know, it helps when they build the controller specifically to play your game, right? But you think about that with like Sonic too. Sonic didn't do it gracefully. You know, Sonic, you know, they did all those games and it felt like there was 1,000 of them. There's a billion Sonic games. And then they went to Sonic Adventure and it's like, oh god, this is not the standard for anything. And then I think about all the other games, like Spyro has a second trilogy, right? It has like a PS2 trilogy, right?
Mm.
And Crash has another trilogy. Like there's 2 Crash Bandicoot 2s.
Yeah, there's technically 2 Crash Bandicoot 4s now as well.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, Jesus. Like it's like, and those games, like they were fine, and then it's like, oh well, people don't want Crash anymore. People don't want. It's like people want those, but not everything has to be transcending, right?
Mm.
Sometimes it's enough to just stay in your lane. It's like if you stay in your lane, everything will be so comfortable for you.
Yeah. I do feel like the Crash and Spyro games do stay in their lane pretty well. Obviously we'll see if we get any future Spyro games, but with Crash and Crash 4 coming out, definitely a IP that's just staying in their lane, just doing what they do well, and then just kind of adding some things on top of it as like an icing on the cake.
Yeah. I mean, didn't they like redo Spyro and it had like a different backstory, and then they were like, "Oh no, Skylanders now."
Yeah, well, so Spyro had like its original trilogy on the PlayStation 1, and then like it had some like spin-off GBA games. There was like a crossover with Crash on the GBA. But they weren't really canon at all. There's like a lot of plot holes between the original trilogy and them. And then there was 2 games on the PS2 that were alright. There was one that was terrible. And then there's just this trilogy out of nowhere that's like this super edgy sort of beat 'em up hack and slash Spyro. Which like it's not bad. It's
kind of bad.
Weird. It's the first game was alright. The second game kind of dropped the ball. The third game was a game. It was playable. They had some okay storytelling, but like as a Spyro trilogy, it just felt really weird and edgy. It's just, I don't know how to describe the Legend of Spyro. It's just
brooding Spyro.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Spyro.
We don't talk about the Legend of Spyro anymore.
I think this is a good chance to jump back into SDAT.
Okay.
Maybe a different, maybe a little bit of a journey here. Maybe we're going all over the place. I like the musical part of the podcast, by the way, A+. I think that so you weren't here, obviously, but SDAT 2020, we came out of it and we were tired, and it was overnight. I mean, it was 24/7. It was hard on everybody to keep that thing going. There was technical problems overnight. Runners weren't showing up. And like it was like, oh, it's a 2 a.m. Eastern run, but the guy's in like the Ukraine. So like this is like his 9 a.m. Like this is your moment, pal. Nah. I'm not showing up. Or what do you mean that was today? It's next weekend. It's like, no, you donut. It's today. It's right now. Actually, it was 2 hours ago. You missed your run. And like we were tired, and I was frustrated at this feedback at the time. We were on the NASA channel, and that's kind of hard. Like it's hard to be on someone else's Twitch channel and have them understand that you're a different brand, right? It's like selling Pepsi out of a Dr. Pepper tent is how I explained it. It's or sorry, other way around. It's like selling Dr. Pepper out of a Coca-Cola tent. They don't understand they're getting Dr. Pepper. Even if the cup says Dr. Pepper, you tell them they're buying a Dr. Pepper, they'll look you in the eyes and say, yes, I am buying a Dr. Pepper. They'll take a sip and they'll go, what the hell? This isn't Coke. What the
Yeah.
hell? Right? Like, they just, even though they're accepting the premise of the show, they don't understand, hey, this is not a NASA show. And so the number one feedback we got, and it was very frustrating, was SDAT 2020 didn't feel like a Speed Docs run event. And I was like, what would a Speed Docs run event look like? Right? Like, I'm already on there the whole time. We already have all the branding. It's just like we say it enough. And I'm like, okay. Well, when we do SDAT 2021, we'll make some changes. We'll make some changes to the format. One of the things we're going to change is the people that were involved in SDAT 2020 were great, but once the weekend was over, they were gone. Right? Like, once the event was over, it was like, you know, I'm in a lot of servers, and
Yeah. They just
it's
kind of,
they faded away,
yeah.
and that's no shade on any of them. If you are listening to this and you have done an SDAT 2020, and you did not come back or whatever it is, no problem. I want you to know there is no heat. I am so thankful for your time and your effort. I'm just saying, it was hard because you lose that support that you had. Everyone that's around you being like, hey, great job, great, you're doing amazing work, and then they leave, and it's like the only people that are left are like, you know what I think, you should put that on your Twitch channel. It's like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I had someone, I was in a friend stream. He's watching a VOD from SDAT 2020. He's literally got the VOD. It has the Speed Docs logo on screen in two places. It has the SDAT logo on screen. I'm on the camera. And in that clip in particular, I was talking about Speed Docs. And he goes, I don't know, man. I just have a hard time understanding that this is a Speed Docs event. I was like, you what? What does that mean?
What?
So,
did they think it was just a NASA event, or?
Yeah. They're like, maybe you should run commercials to explain. I'm like, commercials? I need to run commercials? And then we ran commercials. We did a bunch of videos leading up to it. We did the bumpers. So that in that moment of indignation, that guy actually gave me a great idea. So thank you, that guy. Although I will not give you credit. I would, because I do not remember your name. So yeah. And then we did this year, and that was not the case. It was a totally different feeling, which is so weird. Everyone stuck around. There was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of people that were new that hung out the whole time or were there for like a lot of it. You know, I mean, and just that kind of support. The viewership number support was amazing. And you were a part of that. I want to hear your perspective about this show.
Yeah. Well, this is a really funny thing to admit, because normally I am that guy that just does my run and then fades. I kind of just like put the Discord down to like the very bottom of my list and just wait for like another announcement and then kind of read and go, cool, awesome. Is there another marathon coming up? Like the for most marathons, there's nothing really keeping me in the community. The only other one that I can think of is ASM, the Australian Speedrunning Marathon, where there is that camaraderie because we're all Australian and that's just what we're like. Like I'm in a Discord server with a bunch of other people from ASM, like the organizers, a bunch of like known people from that marathon. But that's kind of the only thing that's keeping me in that community, really. There wouldn't be much of an incentive. But with SDAT, something, it was different with SDAT. It didn't just feel like a marathon. Like I came into SDAT knowing nobody. I mean, like I knew of you and I knew of CC because I've watched the YouTube content for a while now. And I knew a couple of the runners, but apart from that, I was a very fresh face and didn't know anyone there. And everyone kind of just brought me in with like really warm open arms. And it was just, it just felt really comfortable when I came into the SDAT community and just the general Speed Docs community. I kind of came in and everyone just kind of accepted me in. You know, kind of like when you have like that friend and like their family kind of brings you in as part of the family. Felt like that, but in a marathon. So to kind of have that, it just kind of kept me around. And so the first weekend when I was doing my first hosting shift, like I was thinking, okay, I think I'm going to stick around and see how this goes. And by the end of the second weekend, I was just there all the time, just wanting to be there, just out of, you know, I want to hang out with these people and I want to see these cool runners. It wasn't just, yeah, I'll just watch it because the marathon's on. It's I want to be here.
Yeah. It was there. I don't know when it happened, but there was a moment where the chat was like, "Where's Clock?" I'm like, guys, he has to sleep at one point. Like you had some crazy sleep schedule that just insane.
It just so happened to be that like I screwed up my sleep schedule right before SDAT, so I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with this and just hang out because I can now. Because I'm waking up at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning. I'm just gonna hang out and then just get some sleep like during the day.
And I'll tell you, this is, and I'm very careful about this, but the hate raid people put us on such high alert that I think I'll never give them credit for fucking anything. Because if you're a fucking hate raider, like, fuck that.
Yeah.
But, you know, and JR, maybe cut that part out where I told the hate raiders to go fuck themselves. And then leave this part in. You know, obviously, you know, we don't like hate raids. And then we were concerned, you know, about protecting our community. And I think that concern just made it kind of gave it more like a very like close feel, you know. And then the other thing was we have just found more people along the way that are friends that are like, hey, like I'm into doing this with you, right? And the biggest example I can think of, who doesn't speedrun, who literally every time that I ask him to do something goes, but bro, I don't speedrun. I'm like, it's fine, dude. Like everything, like ask him to be on the podcast, like ask him to be a mod. He's like, I don't know anything about speedrunning. And I'm like, dude, you're fine. It's Crunchy Brown.
Yeah.
Like Crunchy is awesome. And
I love Crunchy.
he has a way of being so direct and nice at the same time. Like his best friends are smashers, and he's like, all smashers are sweaty. And then he flashes those like frustratingly perfect white teeth, and it's like, oh, he's just having a great time. You know, Crunchy Brown is just crunchy, yeah, crunchy, yeah,
Crunchy Brown.
It's Crunchy Brown, yeah. Right? Like he's just like so up and he's so energized all the time. And it's like, and he just was coming up with bits on the fly. Like he came up with that thing about how I was gonna fire him.
That was beautiful.
We kept amazing.
That going. We kept that going for so long.
And he literally tapped into dudes. I'm only 2 subs away from a Twitch payout energy. And it was like he was like he had like the panhandle out, right? He was just like had the hat out in the street dancing for money. That was amazing. That was really incredible.
Well, just when I was hosting, commentating, and running, just being like, yo, if we don't hit this goal, Crunchy Browse is gonna lose his job. And everyone got into it as well. Like the chat got into it, restreamers got into it, you guys got into it, hosts got into it, runners got into it.
It's so crazy. And it's one of the other weird things where it was a joke birthed in a moment I had left the stream. Not that many moments. Not that many during the event where I actually left and like went and did something. I think I only went to like get something to eat and like go to the bathroom before coming back. You know, and it was in that moment, and it's like that was honestly like such a great moment for me because I'm like, okay, this is gonna be fun. Right? Like the guys can take care of themselves. Like they will have their own fun if I'm not here the entire time, like blowing on the train whistle and the kazoo and like exhausting myself. Because at launch party, we were very thin. We were so thin. We had no help. We had very little help. And I remember doing like a 10-hour shift of hosting one day because we had
Ooh.
nobody. We had literally nobody. And I remember being like, I'm not gonna give this burden to anybody else. So like saddle up. Like we're going in. And I remember it and being like, we just can't do that again. But at the same time, it's you're worried. You're worried that you're not gonna have that energy. You know, some people don't have that energy.
Yeah, they don't have the energy for a marathon.
They don't have the energy to host and
Yeah.
like hawk. Because really, what I'm putting you out there to do is to beg for money, but make it
Yeah.
sound like you're asking nicely, you know? And so, like, you got it. Like, you really got it. You ended up doing the Tony Hawk thing was your shift, right? That was great.
Yeah, that was a fun run to host. I really enjoyed that shift. There were a lot of donations too during that run.
Yeah, and you had a bonus shift too because someone dropped out.
Yeah, I took over for
Ruby.
Alice's.
Yeah. So there was a
Yeah.
run, Ruby, who was a great host as well, had a lot of energy. They had like a sore throat talking issue, and they woke up and couldn't speak. So I was like, oh no problem. Like, well, obviously we can work around that for sure. Thanks for letting me know. And I remember like Clock, and I felt bad because I'm like, all right, Clock's new. I'm gonna give Clock like 2 shifts, and they're gonna be short because also your availability, because you hadn't considered the fact that your sleep schedule was gonna be fucked up.
Yep.
Was a little sparse, but I was like, okay, no problem. Get him in for 2 quick runs. And then I was like, damn, I wish I scheduled Clock more.
At the end of the Luigi's Mansion run, which was my first shift of the marathon, I just like got out of comms, and the first thing I said was, "Man, I want more shifts now. I just want to host more. This is fun." Because
it was a lot of fun.
That was my first time host. Like I've commentated before, and I've run at marathons before, but that was my first time actually hosting, actually being a proper host for a speedrunning marathon, and it was just way too much fun.
Yeah, like it can be a lot of fun driving the bus when you're allowed the room to work.
Yeah.
This is not a criticism about any one specific event. I've done some hosting volunteering for several events, and the ones that honestly are the most frustrating. This is probably the most common combo. I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm not talking about one group of people in particular. But you're hosting for an event, and they have expectations for you, right? They have guidelines that they expect you to adhere to, and they give you the guidelines, and sometimes like you get half a page, right? And if you're like me and you're like, okay, is this all that you want me to say? Is this all you care about? And they're like, yeah, this is just color in the lines, stay within this half page. My hosting guide was 8 pages. Not only did I make all of the hosts read it, then I got them in a Discord call and I read it to them, right?
I can confirm that because I was pulled into a Discord call like 2 weeks before the marathon to go over the whole thing. I can confirm that.
Yeah. Do you have any questions? No. Are you sure? Yes. Okay. Next part. If you have questions, interrupt me at any time. And it's 8 pages to tell you what the expectations are, but then give you the room you need to be creative, to be interesting, to be yourself, right? As opposed to the people that give you half a page of guidance, sometimes, the night before the event in one case, sometimes not at all, but they give you a half page hosting guide, and it's like, then they're in your ear while you're doing it. Oh, don't say that. Oh, don't do that. No. Don't say that. What are you doing? Okay, we're ready to go. We're ready. Stop doing this bit you're doing. You're talking to the audience. Don't do that. It's like, okay, put it in the guide. If you have expectations for me, put it in the guide. The guide was 8 pages, but the guide just told you what not to do. It didn't tell people what to do, except for like how to communicate with like the restreamers and stuff. It was really more like, this is what you have to do. You have to go here, you have to go there, you have to go over here. I don't care in what order you do it. If you don't do it every shift, I understand. Make decisions that you think are going to be best for the event in the meantime, like in the short term. You know, vamp, be creative, be innovative, and I trust your judgment, right? I trust that you're making the best decision based on the information you have available to you in the moment. And because I think because I did that, all of the hosts were great.
Yeah, I don't think there was a host that I like kind of sat there for and was like, oh, well, this person isn't really great. And to be fair, like the fact that you gave us like this very sort of specific set of guidelines, but was like, hey, apart from this, do whatever the hell you want. I think that allowed for bits like, you know, hey, if we don't hit $3,600, I'm going to lose my job sort of stuff, you know, like all of the funny bits that we had, like, you know, for $3,750, Gaffy Taffy was the only crash runner who didn't have a players crash or Coco bid war. And so you were gone for this. But Grace, Animated Elf, she was hosting, and I'm sitting there in chat, and we're just talking about how Gaffy was the only one who didn't have a crash or Coco bid war. And so we said, look, for $3,750, we'll bully Gaffy into playing his Coco. And we hit $3,750 like an hour later.
The milestones were huge this time. We didn't do them before because we didn't think it mattered. But it matters to us while we're raising money to hit these checkpoints. It makes us feel better. And it made chat have a goal to work towards, because once you got within $100, it was like, oh, it's happening. Right? Like once you got within $50, then you could blow the train whistle and get that 50. Right? And then you'd overshoot it because people can't coordinate when they're donating, right? They're not like, all right, I'll donate 20 and then you donate 20 later, right? They overshoot it. Suddenly you're on your way to your next goal. And I think there was a lot of great bits. I'll give you a great example of something that happened at a different event. It was NASA and NASA 21. Yeah. And I was hosting. I volunteered to host because I was doing commentary for New Snap. It was run by Quo. And Quo and I have a lot of chemistry. And I just felt like, okay, well, I'll be able to host and whatever. And something I said during the beginning of the run was, if you donate $2, I will read out a Pokédex entry.
Yes, the Pokédex entries.
And we got like $100 in $2 bills, right?
Yeah.
Like it was not an official incentive. It was not sanctioned. There was no member of staff. They were like, what are we getting all these $2 donations for? It's like, I just decided to wing it. And it ended up being great because you read the room. People had asked for it in the chat, and I said, all right, I'll do it. I'll sing Fiddler on the Roof for the right amount of money, an amount of money that was donated for. You know, like I'll do it. I don't care. I'll dress in drag and do the hula if you give me enough money. It's just a matter of like, okay, how do we get the chat engaged? And I felt like everybody that we had hosting this time really got it. Even if there was a shift or two where it was like people were like, we're tired, or we just hit a major milestone and it was unrealistic to expect we were going to make like $200 during the next shift. And the last thing I'll say about that in regards to like incentives and stuff is that we've never missed an incentive ever. Not at SDAT, not at launch party, and not at SDAT 21. We've never missed an incentive.
That's impressive. That is really impressive.
It's insane. It's really crazy.
Yeah. There were a couple of incentives at SDAT that I was like, at one point I was like, I don't know if we're gonna make these. And then all of a sudden, like you check back like half an hour later and it's been hit and you're on your way to the next one. The milestones were beautiful, by the way. Like, you had like your original $3,000 goal, which, like, I mean, it's cool to hit, but like your every time you had a milestone or one of these just random on the spot incentives, you're giving people a reason to donate, because I mean, there is the reason of you donating to charity, which, people are going to chuck some money towards, but people are going to put more money towards charity if there's something that they also get out of it.
1000%. There are so many ways that people have different values on how they spend their money.
Yeah.
For example, we had a shop at one point, and when we had a shop and we said the money was going to charity, it wasn't this year, but we did that before. A lot of people bought merch because they were comfortable getting a physical good and having the profits go to charity. They were willing to buy a $25 sweatshirt because it meant that $7 was going to go to St. Jude at the time. And that is one way that you can get people to do that, because they get something physical in return. And we had tried milestones in the past. The problem had been the milestones we had come up with were based on the fact that we're a YouTube channel. And that meant that we came up with content. And the milestones were and we're still doing them. Don't get me wrong, we're still working on them. One of them is the Speed Docs mockumentary. We're going to do a Speed Docs on Speed Docs. And that's ridiculous. It's silly. It's going to take a long time to make. And when we thought of it, it was to get us to $4,000, and we hit it. And it was beautiful. It was a really special moment. But we're sitting there like, we didn't even have an idea. I had written a few sketches, but we didn't really even have a plan for how we were going to shoot it. Like, it was not something we planned for. So when we sat down to do SDAT 21, I said, we're coming up ahead of time with milestones. And you were in the chats in the in-between week. And so I know you saw this. I was like, motherfuckers, give me ideas for milestones. I want to hear your milestone ideas, because I am coming up short. God damn.
The milestones you guys had were really good, and again, they were, for those of you who weren't at SDAT, it was pretty much just, hey, we'll unlock these new videos early, or hey, there's a bid war for what video you want to see next, or in the case of Argic's podcast episode, I think TGH's or the one before it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There were the channel point rewards for unlocking them early, and they weren't even monetary, and people just wanted that. So having those milestones was just spectacular, and I don't think you would have come anywhere near 7,000 if you didn't have those.
They were really special. They were really great.
Yeah.
And the big thing about them is that mostly all of them, were either stuff we already had done. Like, one of them was to release the Shadow of the Colossus video. One of them was to choose the next Speed Doc video.
Yeah.
Easy stuff we can do instantly. But the rest are streamed stuff, like streamed content. And the best part about streamed content is you put 1 hour in of work, you get 1 hour of content. Whereas on a Speed Doc video, you put in 1 hour of work, you get no seconds of content.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I have to work 300 hours to make a Speed Docs video. I can't make that an incentive. Grumble, 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 grumble. And I think the best part about that was, like, people understood, like, hey, I don't know if I'm going to watch the Speed Docs charity game show, but everyone else seems excited about the Speed Docs charity game show. Actually, so the art gig and the TGH podcast, those were great. And we set those up so they kind of came out as normal. There was actually a third podcast that was supposed to come out, and it will come out before yours, hopefully. Otherwise, I'm just going to announce that if at some point there is this episode in the works. Author Blues was supposed to be the last
Oh,
podcast, and I have an Author Blues. I have a podcast that me and Author Blues sat down and did. So Author Blues is either the podcast before this, or he will be on at some point in the future if you're listening to this. But the Author Blues actually had audio problems, and we had to send it off to a audio doctor to help fix it. I call him the audio doctor. It's Dark Aries. So whenever Dark Aries has a day off, he's gonna fix that episode for you, and it should be great. It's a great episode. It's a great conversation. And yeah, so there's lots of really cool stuff coming up. We did the co-op speedruns. We did the Halo 3 ODST. That was a lot of fun.
they were fun to watch.
It's fun I really like the process of learning a speedrun. But what I love more was like, it was JR's first speedrun. And it was also the first time that most people met JR.
Yeah. We only knew JR by JR. We didn't have a face. We didn't have anything.
That was the second time, and CC and I and him and now Quo are business partners. It was the second time that CC had ever seen JR.
That's beautiful. I love that.
He is as close to a recluse. Hey JR, I love you. He edits the podcast. He's as close to a recluse as you can get in this community. He never got into the Discord and Twitch environment the way that a lot of us did. He kind of just was like, I like YouTube. So he has his channels that he watches, and he's just like, I'm watching my YouTube shows. More power to you, buddy. I know you're listening. I know you're mad at me. If you're editing this one day when we're working in the office together, you're going to turn over and glower at me.
You'll just be like, what? What's that? Like, I heard what you said about me. I heard it.
Yeah, he'll look over at me. He'll take his headphones off. He'll say something pithy, and then I'll be like, what? And then he'll like look up in the air and shake his head and go back to work.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a really, really in-depth visual. But yeah, no. So I think the last thing about SDAT was how special that final 45 minutes was. Were you there for the ending?
Oh yeah, I was there for Outrageous Josh's run.
Tell the people in your own words.
Oh man. Okay, so we're coming up to the end of SDAT. It's day 7. And we're about to start the final run, which is Outrageous Josh doing Jack and Dexter, the Precursor Legacy, all flies, which is a great run. I love watching it. And we had just passed $6,000, and as soon as we hit 6K, CJ and CC announced that if we hit $7,000, we would get a marathon called Speed Docks, DOCKS, which is going to be all about fishing or fishing adjacent games. And I sat there thinking, I don't think we're going to make it. I think we might get to like 6.4 or 6.5. But I remember there's one line from Josh, and you talk about it a lot. You've been talking about it a lot since SDAT, where Josh looked at the camera after we had a couple of donations, like some small ones, and we'd hit like $6,200, and he literally said, if you love me and you love this game, donate right now. And not only did we get a bunch of donations, we had bunches of donations in the hundreds of dollars. And in the last 45 minutes, there was over $1,000 raised, hitting over 7K. It was just beautiful.
I couldn't believe it.
Oh, same here.
Like CC is so sure when he tells the story. He's so sure, and he really was, because I was DMing him like, bro, I don't think we're gonna hit 7K. Like, he's like, I have faith, and I'm like, there's 45 minutes left, and he's like, I have faith, and I'm like, and I agonize over this schedule and every run, and I think about how much every run is going to make, and I think about that when I put people where they are. I like so much of me is in this event, so much of it. If you love this event, if you watch SDAT and you're like, oh man, I really like this, you're liking so much of me, because this is a lot of my heart and soul and my ideas that Quo and the Restream and the tech team bring to life. you know.
Mm.
And the way that everything is set up is the way that I would like it to be set up if I were hosting in another marathon. Like, everything I do is to get this, and I'm sitting there like, I don't think we're hitting 7K. I just don't think it's happening. Like, maybe we should say 65. And he's like, nope, 7K. Do you really want to do speed doxathon with a K? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, leave it where it is. And then MASH, $200. Funyuns, $160. MASH,
God.
$250. Like I said, MASH woke up that day and chose violence because
Well,
that was insane.
I was saying that too. And then for the later half of the run, I was saying MASH didn't just wake up and choose violence. MASH woke up and chose world domination.
Yeah. And if you have ever watched in a marathon, and we're not JDQ here. We hit 6K during New Snap, and
Yeah.
I was getting texts and calls, congratulation emails and stuff, and I wasn't checking my phone because I was still on the mic. And so when I went to bed that night, everybody that had congratulated me saying that, hey, you got to 6K, that's crazy. We raised 1,045 minutes. Nobody could have seen that coming. It was insane.
Well, with marathons, I mean, when you have these sorts of events, it is normal to have like a big burst at the start, and then it's going to flatten out, and you're going to get some donations rolling in, and then it's going to have a big burst at the end. But that's $1,000 in 45 minutes.
Yeah, for a small show, you know.
It was
crazy.
We had like what, 60, 70 people for most of the marathon?
Yeah.
And like it's $1,000 in 45 minutes. That's huge.
It was $1,000 in 45 minutes, and the big donators didn't show up. It was all new donations. That's the other crazy part, because we had Oilers. We had people that were there that were like, oh, this is like, I'm going to donate all my money today. And we're just crazy, and we're being very generous. Like, I got a message, and I love Shuli. God bless her. Shuli is the sweetest person I've ever met. Shuli DMs me and is like, should I ban this person? And I look, and their username is Zems Erect. And they're in the chat, and they're not saying anything. And Tiltify, he's been donating under the name of like Scronch Bunkle or something. Scronch Bunkle.
Yeah, it's non-scrunchal.
Not Scrunkle, right? And he had been donating whenever we needed like a boost, whenever we needed like $20, $30, he was like kickstarting it off, right? Like, he was just around. And the email, and the reason I know it's him is because I get to see everyone's emails, and it said, Zems Erect. And that's obviously a shitter account for Zem's stream, friend of the show, Speedox alumni. Great dude. Love Zem. And fucking, I actually messaged Zem and was like, just wanted to let you know, some dude named Zems Erect donated like $400 during the event.
No. We had the most unexpected people donating throughout those like 2 weekends. Just names that it's like a name that you would see in the Tiltify, but you wouldn't see in chat. And they just, it would be a lot. It would be like $50, $100. And then you wouldn't see them again. And then tomorrow they'd be like, hey, here's like another $50.
Crazy. I mean, just people that like, we don't hear from them. They don't come to the Discord. They just come to donate. It was very, very crazy, very sweet, very nice, and very generous. So, I don't know. Like, people keep asking. A lot of people have been asking, like, what are you doing next? What's the next, SDAT? And I get it, because I missed it. Like, the day after, that Tuesday, the SDAT blues set in. And I don't think that there were any bad runs on the schedule. The honestly, the greatest thing about SDAT was that when things went wrong, it still felt good. Like, it still felt like the chat was happy, hanging out. We were just hanging out. The restream PC blew up. We had to switch computers. We did the back half of Blueberry's run on Grace's computer with no timer.
No time. I just sit there. There was Dayman's run where CC's mouse wasn't his mouse.
Okay, we're telling that story, and then
I was hosting for that, and that was just beautiful.
That was okay. So this is the final story. This is the most amazing, beautiful moment of SDAT, and then we'll start wrapping up. But this is the most amazing, beautiful moment of SDAT. And I know Cece listens to every episode, so Cece, like, this is your sign. So you're hosting. The run that was supposed to happen was F0. You were already filling in for this run.
Yes.
And so this wasn't your shift. Someone had dropped. You were filling in. And so it's you on the mic. And, like, you know, you get your stuff out of the way. You read all the incentives. And you know about how much time you have. And then you kind of start winding down. And, you know, that's what I do. And you're like, okay, let's check in with the restream team and see how we're doing. Are we almost ready? And it's like, no. David dropped. David was supposed to do 1-0, 1F0, F0. But 1F0. His name was 1David J. He was supposed to be doing F0. His internet betrayed him. He dropped 80% of his frames. It wasn't happening. So the whole weekend, whenever we had a drop, Dayman was like, you need me to do Rogue Squadron? And I'm like, I'm putting you in my back pocket for when I really need you. Get the game warmed up. Make sure it's ready to go. How much lead time do you need to do a Rogue Squadron run? He said, I can do a Rogue Squadron run literally with no notice. I said, that's perfect. So if you know, we had gotten other runs. We had 7 runs drop, which was a lot. We all handled it really well. And we always put new runs in. I did 3 extra runs. 2 extra runs. Yes, I did 2 extra runs.
Yeah.
We had
Mario Karts.
Yeah, woo. And I remember that. So I log in and see. I'm like, CC, you're restreaming. Dayman's going. Bet. This was on the new restream PC. So if you were watching, you couldn't tell the difference. Like, if you were watching the stream, you would not be able to tell the difference. Everything was identical. But on the back end, everything went from being brain dead simple to being a little complicated because it was a different computer. And it was also not a Linux machine. It was a Windows machine. So there were some things that were different. Everyone had practiced on the Linux machine. Everything was mostly the same, except CC goes to log in and his mouse isn't his mouse. And I'm with him. Because I'm like trying to like figure out what's going on. I'm trying to like, what do we tell Clock? Like, are we vamping? What are we doing? Like, what's the problem? What's going on? Because it was a long intermission. And he's like, and all he says to me is, my mouse is in my mouse. And I'm like, what does that mean?
I saw that in chat and just was cackling. I was just sitting there muted in Discord. I'm like, my mic is, I'm going to deafen in Discord and just get all of this out because this is the funniest thing I've ever seen.
I was laughing at him while he was trying to fix it. I couldn't. It was the funniest fucking thing. So what happened was it forced a different resolution in the remote session than it did on his monitor. So his mouse would be like, imagine putting your mouse in the middle of the screen. His mouse would be like 4 or 5 mouses away. So he's like trying to find out where his mouse is. His mouse really literally wasn't his mouse. And then there was a box he had to check to make the resolution work. And then, so he set up a runner with his mouse not being his mouse. And then we also didn't have a timer. And so I was laughing the entire time. It was such a beautiful fire because Dayman was actually the restreamer, which is why he was so readily available. So all of a sudden, my favorite part is Clock is like, wait, Cece, are you hosting? Like,
yeah, like I was sitting there because So for those of you who don't know, we use a different audio software to do our back channel stuff. And all I hear is, hey, I think it was CC who said it, and CC's like, hey, just a heads up, Dayman's gonna do Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2. And I'm like, all right, cool. And then the first thing I thought was, wait, who the fuck's gonna restream this? Is Dayman gonna restream his own run, and then I'm just gonna have to host it?
Oh my god, it was really funny. It it was really hilarious. It was really hilarious. And no, and CC didn't get scheduled a lot for stuff because we used him as the patch guy. He goes in here, he goes in there. We just put him where we needed him, and that really worked out. You know, I don't think I've talked to him about how he felt about that, but it really worked out for like having a host restreamer that was available at all times that could fill. And shout out to Dayman for coming in so clutch. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was pretty great.
It didn't put us too far behind schedule further than what we already were anyway. We kind of just kept that pace that we're on. And not only that, like, I feel like it's kind of just a perfect turn of events because I was hosting and I've played that game. So I kind of know it from a casual perspective. So I was there to be able to ask questions, to be like, hey, for people who don't know, what's this? Like, why are you doing this? And Dayman is just a great dude anyway. So having kind of people that I trust, able to fix these issues in like such good time was great. The funniest thing was just sitting there in the intermission channel, just thinking, what are they? Why is this taking so long? Why is CC now joining? Why is CJ now joining? What are these guys doing in there?
It was a lot of like, whenever something happened, I just jumped in the dog pile and was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Right?
Yeah.
And
having the timer.
Good.
So yeah, having the timer start when Dayman finished his run, because the timer wasn't running because we couldn't get the timer going when the run started because, you know, CC's mouse wasn't his mouse. And so we're just sitting there the whole time. It just says 0. And then we get to the end of the run and Dayman's like, time! And CC hits the button to start the timer. The estimate was like 45 minutes or something like that. And then amazing. CC hits the timer, starts it, and we're like, CC, you just started the timer. He stops the timer at 9 seconds. I'm like, new world record!
I don't know. I think if CC were here, he'd be like, oh, I did that on purpose. And I'm like, my man, I would not blame you if you said that you did that instinctually. He heard time and was like, hit the big key.
Yep.
Oh my god. That's amazing.
Yeah, that run was just too much fun.
Do you have any other favorite SDAT moments before we start winding down?
Oh, I think we've kind of covered all of just my favorite moments. We had the crunchy stuff. We had Dayman's run. You know, we had Josh's run. The crash block was really fun.
Crash block was very fun.
Not only did I run on day 4, and we had some great donations come in for that. I was surprised we had so many donations during my run. I thought it was going to be really slow, but I streamed some practice right before my run, like before I got ready for my run, and then just raided over into you guys, and people just stuck around, which is really fun. And just being able to run was awesome. And then last minute commentating for Gaffy. Then as I was leaving the call, Dayman pings me and says, hey, get in setup. I didn't know this, but like literally last minute, Crispy had his commentators drop. So while he was in setup, he was like, yo, I'll get Clock and Gaffy to come in. So I ended up literally last minute, as we were in intermission, we were getting set up for me to commentate that run.
Wow. Yeah, I thought it was so cool that you did the commentary for each other's runs, that you did all the commentary. I thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that wasn't planned.
Yeah, no, Gaffy was like a few hours before. I was like, yo, I messaged him, I'm like, hey, do you want me to commentate for your run? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then literally as I was leaving, and I was like, yeah, no, good run, Gaffy. We'll watch Crispy's run and we'll just chill out. Dan Answer's like, yo, coming to set up. And I'm like, hey, do you want me to commentate? And Crispy's like, yeah, come on. And I'm like, yeah, sweet. It was so good. And it was such a good run to commentate as well. I love commentating runs, and I just love being there on the mic.
Yeah. I remember who was on screen every time we hit a milestone. When we hit 3,000, it was Insert Logic for Spyro. When we hit 4,000, it was Crispy, which was cool.
That bid war for Crispy was great.
Yeah, that I put a little money into that one myself. I was really
that made it an actual war.
That was one of the few that actually felt like a bid war and not a poll.
Well, yeah, because it was just like me. It was to play as Crash or Coco, and because you can't select Coco straight away. We had 2 levels of the game where we had to play as Crash, and we're like, all right, cool, we'll close it at the end of this level. And I thought we were gonna like close it at the start of the level and be like, cool, at the end of this level you're playing as this character. But the Crash community kind of just rolled up. They were donating $20, $50 at a time to just push their favorite character ahead by like $1. And I'm sitting there in setup. Like, we're on intermission, and I'm just like, Crispy, this is going to be hot. I'm just going to have to keep my eye on this. Crunchy's hosting, I'm commentating. And we're just giggling over just how many donations are coming in for this. And it literally was like, Crispy was like, all right, in 5 seconds, I'm going to need to know who won. And at the time, it was Coco. And then Crispy's just like, all right, who am I playing as? And I'm like, yeah, you're playing as Coco. And Crunchy's like, no, we just got a donation in 3 seconds ago. You're playing as Crash. It literally came down to the last 5 seconds. It was beautiful.
That is beautiful. I was there for that. I remember that. Crunchy was like, all right, turn it off now. Turn it off now.
And I'm like, you're playing as Coco, yeah. And Crunchy's like, no, you're playing as Crash.
Oh my god. At 5,000, CC and I were on. He was doing Old Snap. And then 6,000 was Eric Gunlap?
Yes, Eric for New Snap.
Yeah, and then Josh was 7,000. So those were really cool moments. Those were really, really, really cool. You know, I think my this last thing, and I remember it being like the funniest moment. Well, it was definitely the most reactive. It was definitely during Josh's run, but at one point I did my R2D2 going through space like like I can't even reproduce it because it'll fry my vocal cords, but just like I was losing my loving mind. I ended up doing like some like, oh no, I'm an idiot, bringing it back to Sable, her damn run where she said that she eats her favorite snack is cold hot dogs with cheese in them. And that was special because she doesn't usually have commentators. Like she prefers to go it alone. She has like a very good rhythm. But she said like, hey, can you like, you feel free to jump in, you know, me and you have good chemistry. I was like, great, we were riffing. And at one point, like, and sometimes like runners are like, hey, we're not even talking about the game, and they're like, oh, we're not talking about the game, tee. But then sometimes they're like, we're not talking about the game anymore. And at one point we were like, she was like, oh, we're not talking about the game anymore, tee. And I was like, yeah, because you eat cold hot dogs out of the fridge with cheese in them. I was like, you're a bedlamite.
Yeah, that's something at Sable that I never knew before. And
yeah, to bring it all back to Sable, the person that introduced me to you.
I mean, hey, if it wouldn't be for Sable, you wouldn't have asked me to submit anything. I wouldn't have submitted anything. I probably wouldn't have heard about the marathon. And then we wouldn't have, and then even if we did hit the $3,200 to get me on here, it wouldn't have been $3,200 to get Clock on the podcast.
That's true. I did kind of use that as a weird crutch because I was like, I'm doing this anyway. I'm gonna ask you to be on the show anyway. I'm just gonna pick an amount that I know we're gonna hit, so that maybe we'll hit it a little sooner. But
I'm pretty sure we hit it during my run as well.
there you go. So that was that. Listen, Speedoxathon was a lot of fun. Glad we got to meet you. Glad that you're sticking around. You're a great dude. You know, anyone that passes the Shuley sniff test is instantly welcome. So I call them Shuley stray dogs. Just like
I heard you say that yesterday.
Shuley goes out and is like, puppy. It's like she brings home this like random streamer and she's like, hey everyone, this is my new friend. This is Haji Podgy. It's like, and the dog's got like mange and there's some like random ass like guy who like was playing casual like Majora's Mask and he's got fleas and he's got some hot takes about the government and everything, and it's like, oh hi Haji Podgy, and she's like Shuli Woovens, and I'm like, oh god, all right, here we go. All right, Haji Podgy, welcome. And I joked that you were one of her stray dogs, and then Quo goes, he's one of your stray dogs. And I was like,
yeah, you're the one who brought me.
I said, yes, he is. He is one of my stray dogs. She's like, I messaged him at 4 a.m. to see if he's awake. I'm like, that's 6 p.m. for him. Of course he's awake.
Of course I'm up.
Like, she thinks it's like great. She's like, oh yeah, it's like 6 a.m. and the only one I know that's awake is Clock. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock for him.
Of course I'm gonna
PM. Be up. Yeah, exactly. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, my dude, for being on the show. Thank you for agreeing to come on. Thank you for everything that you did during SDAT, because you did do a lot. You know, you were very valuable as a mod. You were very great in everything that you did, and we really appreciate you and all the hard work that you put in. If you like my guest and you want to hear more from him, you can follow him on Twitter, as I just did, twitter.com/Clockdistrict. If you want to find him on Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/Clockdistrict. I'm going to spell that for you really quick because I just realized I didn't before. CLOCKDISTRICT, all one word. You can find him at Clockdistrict on Twitter, twitch.tv/Clockdistrict. And if you want to check out the speedruns that he's done that are his PBs, the best of the best, the creme de la creme, you can go to speedrun.com/user/Clockdistrict. And thank you so much for being a guest on the show. It was wonderful having you. Everything that I said before, I mean it. You are welcome back on the show at any time. Thank you, everybody who listens each and every week. You guys keep the show afloat. You keep us listening. You keep us honest. You keep us making more content, interviewing more guests. If you like this episode, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, tell your neighbors. Your neighbors have kids, tell the neighbors' kids, unless they can't listen to podcasts, then have their parents download it for them. And tune in next week where we have, and I'm going to do something I never do, which is tell you what the next episode is. It'll be Gaffy Taffy.
Ooh.
So Gaffy Taffy was also part of the incentive to be on Speedrun Insider. So Gaffy Taffy will be the next guest. Actually, I'm recording with him soon, actually. So tune in for that. It's going to be a great episode. I know you're going to have a lot of fun. Thank you one last time, Clock.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.